So what is one of the biggest things that you can remember if being asked about Crisis on Infinite Earths? Is it that worlds lived and worlds died? Was it when the Anti-Monitor was defeated but the universe was never the same again? Or maybe perhaps you're not too familiar with the intricacies of the Crisis storyline, but there may still be one thing that you do know which you have heard somewhere or another, which is when one of the biggest heroes in the DC universe seemingly died and wasn't seen of again for a very, very long time, and that is the Scarlet Speedster we all know and love, Barry Allen. And now for the first time ever, we are seeing our first live action iteration of Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW's Arrowverse, which is a very ambitious and huge crossover to take on, and will accomplish such an impressive feat on television, and not just to mention for DC in general. And as much as we all know what we think could or will happen, there's bound to be surprises linking to this main plot. So today we're focusing on the Flash himself, Barry Allen, and how he could still die in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And yes, you heard me right, I can hear someone in the back right now saying, what, Boba, you're saying Barry Allen could still die? Hear me out, we will get to that. Let me get one thing clear before we dive into how. We are still going to have Grant Gustin as the Flash on the CW. Now, how do I know that? Just for those who are genuinely thinking our Earth's Barry Allen will die permanently. Well, I'll clue you in just on the mere fact that we have a whole second half of the Flash season 6 with the second main villain after Bloodwork with Barry, not to mention an extremely likely season 7. But if there's one thing that we know about what the Arrowverse does, or any TV show for that matter, that adapts books or comics, is that the key word there being adapt. Even though Crisis on Infinite Earths isn't out yet and won't be out for quite a little while yet, I can imagine some fans critiquing how different it was, or how it, wasn't even remotely accurate in areas. And how do I know that? It's just a simple answer of course it's going to be. I mean, this is a different take on the canon. However, it maintains but also treads new ground, and the perfect example is that, the article headline we've seen for many years now will likely say that the Green Arrow goes missing in Crisis. Now, I mean, I could be wrong there, but give or take that example, other big things will be different, but also many big things will remain the same, of which one is still likely, or at, the very least, I'm hoping, which some probably aren't hoping for Barry Allen to die in one way or another. So there are different ways that they could still pull this off but give a twist, which I think, due to the nature of what I just described, is a given in this crossover. And of course I'm half expecting this twist to go down in one way or another. If not, at the very least, they could go for a little tribute to when Barry sacrificed himself in the comics to save multiple Earths from dying at the hands of the Anti-Monitor. I mean, for example, remember when they did a similar thing in the Elseworlds crossover, where they had Barry and Kara race around the Earth? I mean, both characters which actually die in the Crisis comic arc. So regardless, my point being there is that we will still get nods to actual plot points like that from Crisis at the very least again, if we're not going to have them directly adapted. But then again, as per this video, how could they still kill off Barry Allen? You may have heard me mention this before, but one way they could do this is to play Barry's story on Crisis very similar to the comics in such a way that we believe, give or take, that his sacrifice could happen. Now, of course, guys, I've mentioned this already. I think most viewers will know it to not actually be a thing permanently, but even with that in mind, I don't think it makes it any less cool, because it's, such a big thing in the story. I don't think it's possible for this Crisis crossover, or this Arrowverse adaptation, if you will, to ignore it entirely, just because we likely know that the Green Arrow will ultimately take the hit. So imagine Crisis playing out in whatever way in your head. We know it starts with Supergirl, followed by Batwoman, and the cliffhanger will end with, surprise, surprise, the Flash, and I think that may indeed tell us something. Yet again, I think most fans, even though some normies may not, shout out to all the grannies who are watching the Flash week to week, could think Barry dies in that cliffhanger if presented so. But how, you may be asking, like, come on, we're this far in the video and you're only just starting to say how he could actually die. Well, what if on the third episode of the crossover, the Flash's episode, the cliffhanger episode for which we have to wait over the Christmas break for weeks and weeks to find find out how the heck things resolve is that they let fans think that Barry dies through running so fast or in a similar but Arrowverse adapted way in the comics. I say think because it could appear as though he dies, and he may well do so, but it wouldn't, as we all know, be permanent. I mean, I could see it now, guys. Multiple articles, multiple videos from YouTubers such as myself with titles similar to that of something like, wait, they did what? But, we know Barry will be back, don't we? And, so for the Christmas period, we'll have those saying he isn't dead. Come on, do be serious. And those who, maybe think about this a bit too much and may post thoughts about thinking Grant Gustin is really not coming back. But back to my point at hand, I really wouldn't be opposed to this. If it wasn't clear already, Barry would seemingly die in Crisis on Infinite Earths, the cliffhanger episode, for only then Oliver Queen to sacrifice himself and die too, and thus reverse Barry's death somehow. But hold on, we will get to more details. We know in Arrow's final season it's extremely likely time travel will play a factor, and I'm sure this crossover is going to pack some pretty surprising punches, so excuse me while I don't have it mapped out in every detail for this second. This is more of a concept, but somehow maybe Oliver could reverse this after the fact, given that he's already struck the bargain with the Monitor to make the ultimate sacrifice, which, could rewrite the original timeline story of where Barry did go missing, hence the article and the original timeline in which the plot could be very accurate to the comic book storyline. Whereas due to the new timeline and many other changes along the way throughout the years of the Arrowverse, it has resulted in all of these changes we shall see unfold, such as Oliver, amongst many other things. But guess what? This isn't really necessarily how I think it will go down, but it is also a likely option in my head because it still has a bit of that wow factor of, our Grant Gustin Flash dying. I mean, it technically, or at least initially, maintains the comic canon, despite, it possibly reversing in the second half after Christmas, and, us having to wait weeks and weeks and weeks until we see what happens next. But how about a little bit more detail than me just giving you a concept? The cliffhanger, similar to what I've already described, is that, the Flash does go missing in Crisis, which sparks discussion for the following weeks amongst the fandom, with just the mere fact that they went there when some fans may be just so sure that they wouldn't show that on screen, given everything we've already said. But the following episode, which is, surprise, surprise, Arrow, could see Oliver somehow weirdly speaking with Barry through the help of the Monitor, or just, insert theory here. And so, maybe trades places with him, which ultimately means trading his life for Barry's, and thus changing the original Crisis storyline where, Barry quote unquote died. But instead of the Speed Force, Oliver goes to live in the Arrow Force. No, sorry, I mean the Paradise Dimension. For a long time, Barry was believed to be dead in the comics, but he returned. So think of it that way with regards to Oliver trying to amend this instantly after realizing what Barry just did to save multiple Earths in the cliffhanger episode. So I'll let that theory sit with you guys. It's just some rough ideas I have in my head of how this iteration of Crisis could go down and how Barry could still technically die, but there is another way that Barry Allen could die, but not our Barry Allen. If you all remember, we were introduced to Elseworlds through Earth 90, which was destroyed by the Monitor in his pursuit of finding the ultimate defense against the Anti-Monitor. However, we had a character who escaped that fate and met our heroes on our Earth, and that hero's name was, yet again guys, surprise surprise, Barry Allen. Now, before anyone mentions it, yes, I know the Monitor clicked his fingers and Earth 90's Barry Allen went bye-bye in what seemed to be a breach portal. You could completely argue he died just because maybe the Monitor wanted to purge everything from Earth 90 since it was already, purged in a way. But what if, as a really cool tribute and a final goodbye, or kind of full circle to John Wesley Shipp's Barry Allen, in that moment when our Barry decides to run so fast which causes him to seemingly die, Earth 90's Barry Allen, who has already had quite a career at his age, decides to stop our Barry, says you've got a lot more work to do yet, there's no point you sacrificing yourself considering how long I've been going, my Earth is destroyed, already, so why not, F it, I'm doing this instead, and goes ahead and does what Barry would have originally sought to do in that original timeline maybe. Now I do still really like this, but I have to admit there's not as much wow factor in the sense of the previous way they could have done it, even though that way, we would all know how Grant Gustin would still be the Flash, but it's not as wow factory. So you still have to add up what Mark Guggenheim and the writers may decide to do on a show and for TV for entertainment. And also considering it's the cliffhanger episode. So what I'm posing as a question to you guys now is, are they going to give us a cliffhanger which consists of our Barry going missing, but only to inevitably resolve and get him back in one way or another in the aforementioned points? Or could it end in a cliffhanger of sorts, but with that of the plot of running fast to the point of perceived death being put onto Earth 90's Flash, who is also named Barry Allen, of which, has its own cool aspect of not as shocking, but an awesome role for John Wesley Shipp to play and would still likely be a score in many fans' hearts. So species, let me know what you thought of what I just discussed. I mean, of course, there are other ways, an infinite, number of ways that this could go down. Writers are writers for a reason. But I don't know, these two ways are just quite solidified in my mind ever since thinking what they could do with the whole article situation. Obviously, that's been such a focal point of the Arrowverse, or should I say, kind of, obviously Barry Allen on The Flash, that it's been coming for a long time. Yes, they've scaled it back to 2019, but I've been thinking, how could they still do it? They're going to give nods to it. They're still going to try and make us think something maybe. Are they still going to do it, actually, but have Oliver somehow interfere with it? Or are they going to have someone like John Wesley Shipp, who is Barry Allen of Earth 90, take the place? I just found all of these things fascinating to consider, so I'd love to hear your input down in the comments below about, ways Barry could die. Do you think they'll still do it? Don't you think they'll do it? Do you think they'll leave a cliffhanger where he does go missing, but he didn't really die? Oliver gets him out. Basically everything I said in this video. Or do you want to expand upon it and just let me know something I just haven't even thought about yet? But other than that, guys, if you did enjoy this video, I'm losing my voice. I would really appreciate it if you left a like on it. It just really does help out the channel. I'm guilty of forgetting to like videos, but if you're remembering right now and you're still here, hit that like button. And if you want to support me further and you're enjoying the videos, do check out my Patreon page. You get incentives back, rewards in return. Thank you to all of my current patrons. Of course, guys, follow me on Twitter if you want to stay up to date with me personally. And lastly, guys, join my Discord server. The link is in the description down below. That never changes. Discord have brought in a new feature now where you can live stream to your server. It's not perfect, but I'm going to be doing some exclusive streams in there, including gaming streams where I get involved with you on games that you guys want to play. Just little things like that, discussions, all that good stuff. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you speedsters in the next video. Goodbye.